And I believe it was not my time to succeed in college, and that's not an excuse. I think when I flunked out of college, I went through other areas of life and I had other experience that prepared me for where I am today. I believe that life takes you full circle, and things went on in my life, and I found myself back where I started at. Never believed I would get back there, never really wanted to get back there, but I believe now that God had a plan for me. So I've worked at 3 different firms in my life. Um, I've worked for 2 corporate firms and 1 private firm. The first corporate firm I worked for was a small volume funeral home, which probably did 150 funerals a year. The second firm I worked for, which was a large volume funeral home, the most prominent funeral home in my city, when I left that firm, we were at 500 to 600 a year. Now I'm at another corporate firm managing, and we do around 320 a year. So I want to start off with the process of all of this. Insurance should be a process if you're not a wealthy person. And let's be honest, if some of our family would die tonight, who could come and write a check or run a credit card for $10,000 to $15,000? So therefore, we need to prepare ourselves. We shouldn't start at 30 years old preparing ourselves. We actually should start preparing our children. We should have policies on all our children, and then when they get up in age, they take over those policies. That's what we should all be doing. I have a policy on my daughter, and even my dad, he still has policies on us. Don't be no fool. My dad is still the owner of those policies. And the reason why is because he know his children. And he know that anytime we get act a fool, and if we're the owner on those policies, he could cash those policies in. So that means if I cash that policy in and I die, Deacon Lewis got to bury me. You know what Deacon Lewis going to do? As much as Deacon Lewis is going to love me, Deacon Lewis probably going to burn me up. You know why? Because he didn't pay that insurance all that time, and I'm going to be a fool and spend his money. So he going to burn me up. So if you're going to keep policies on your kids, understand, if you're the owner of the policy, no one else can do anything with that policy. They can't cash it in. So if you're going to keep policies on, even if you die, you can still be the owner, but that policy is over your child. And so what can happen is when they become 21 years old, they can add on to that policy. Know the difference between life and term. Term is just what it says. It's for a specific term. Life is for the whole life. I don't want to go into the differences because there's pros and cons in all of them. But just know that if you get a 30-year term, after your 30 years is up, you're not covered. So, and this, I'm actually dealing with a situation right now. I had a lady walk into my office about a month ago, looked perfectly fine. She said, I want to come and play in my funeral. I said, okay, let's sit down. And she said, well, baby, I don't have a whole lot of money nor a whole lot of time. And when she was talking time, I'm thinking about minutes. She was talking life. And she said, I have a 30-year policy. If I live to August, I don't have insurance. She died this morning. So those are the things you have to think about when you consider term and whole life. Whole life is a lot more expensive. You get a term policy, probably $30, $40 a month. Whole life is going to run you at least $100, and you won't be able to get as much as insurance. So those are things you have to really, really think about. It's up to your personal decision. I will not try to sway you anyway on that, but I think you do need to know the difference. Keep up with your beneficiaries on your insurance policies. You may have your husband as your beneficiary. Your husband dies. And then so you die 20 years later, your husband still is the beneficiary. He's dead. It's not hard, but it can be difficult if everybody does not have the right information. I advise people to look over their policies at the end of every year. January the 1st, pull your policy out, look over it. All right? Know exactly what you have. So in the 1940s, around that time, they didn't sell black people big policies. And the reason why, because that was a way for people to get wealthy. So they only sold you $10,000 policies, if that. A lot of those policies, they come in, people have a stack of books, $300, $500 policies. So know what you have, know what you don't have. Also, know what type of insurance you have. Trust me, a lot of insurance agents have got over on people by selling them accidental insurance. So they'll sell you a $100,000 policy, but it's an accidental insurance policy. So you come in and you sit down and you give me this policy, and I look at it, and it says accidental, and you really think you have a life policy. So you didn't pay $30, $35 a month for 20 years, but you can only get it if there was an accident. Trust me, it happens a lot. And I'm going to say this over and over and over. Go over your policies. Take it to a funeral home and let somebody look at it. Take it to an insurance agent, let somebody look at it. But you do need to know what exactly you have. A lot of people don't like going into funeral homes. But how are you going to know what you need if you never go into one? We go car shopping before we need a car. I remember as a kid, my dad would buy cars every 8 years. So on the 7th year, he started car shopping. And I used to be so embarrassed because he would always do it during the summer. But all summer long, we go all these dealerships. Don't bother me, I'm just looking. But he knew what kind of money he needed. So most people have no clue how much funerals cost. And when I tell people, they're like, whoa, that's a lot of money. But that's just the reality of it is. Now, let's be honest. Do you have to spend a lot of money on a funeral? No, you don't have to spend. So that's why you need to know where you're going, who offers what. There's, in the funeral home industry, we call it different types of funeral homes. So let me break it down. There's low-end funeral homes. That doesn't mean anything disrespectful. They just are very inexpensive. I did not say cheap. I said they are very inexpensive. So you may go to a funeral home and they may not have the most up-to-date cars. They may not have the biggest building. There may be a low-end funeral home. They're a lot less expensive. Then you have mid-range funeral homes. Then you have high-end funeral homes. You could tell a high-end funeral home, they're going to have big buildings. They're going to have the most expensive cars. So one thing I want you to do understand this is a lot of people say that nothing is free. Trust me, in the funeral industry, if somebody telling you they're giving you something, they're giving you something. I want you to understand that we are giving you something. We don't just tell you that to tell you that, because we have a price list. And understand this, it's called a GPL. If you ever walk into a funeral home and nobody gives you a GPL, walk out. By federal law, they have to give you a price list. And that price list, they cannot take it back. They got to give it to you to keep. So we have everything listed on our GPL. So if you write your contract out and we give you something on that contract that's not on that contract, we've truly given it to you. It's not covered by anything else like, oh, you paying for it somewhere else? No. We giving it to you. So back to the different types of funeral homes. And you need to know what you want. If you want a low-end funeral home, that's nothing wrong with that. But if you want a high-end funeral home, there's nothing wrong with that. But I want to warn you about the high-end funeral homes. I work at one. There's no gimmick, but we put that out there for you to make money, for us to make more money. At our funeral home, every funeral, you're going to have complimentary coffee, tea, lemonade. Saturday mornings, you may have donuts. If you do a viewing, we may have cheese, crackers. It's a high-end funeral home, but we charge higher prices. Does that necessarily mean you're going to get better service? Not necessarily, because I can honestly tell you, in Baton Rouge, there's probably 12 funeral homes, and there's only one funeral home I would tell somebody not to go to. All the rest of them, I respect them very well. We just operate a little different. But you have to know what you want. Do not, I repeat, do not let anybody tell you where to take your loved one. That's a decision you make on your own, because here's the reason. You got to be happy with that decision. Now, I want to tell you something else about taking your loved one to a funeral home. And I've had this happen to me. So there's this lady. I never met her a day in my life, but her daughter called me and said, my mama said she wanted you, Marcus Lewis specific, to do her funeral. Never met this lady a day in my life. Fine. Okay. She comes in, the whole family comes in. They wanted to go to another funeral home, the family, but the mother wanted to come there. So right off the bat, we had problems because they were somewhere they didn't want to be. And I'm going to explain it to you like this. If you're dating someone, but that's not the person you want to be with, and there's someone across the street you want to be with, I don't care what the person does you're with, it's not good enough. Go where you want to be happy. Because if you go somewhere that you really don't want to be, I don't care what I do, I'm not going to please you. And it's just going to make you miserable, and it's going to make me miserable. This situation got so bad that they was just calling me at 10 o'clock at night just to annoy me because they just really didn't want to be there. And it was a learning lesson for me. We actually had some pretty bad words. But at the end of the day, it was 3 of them. One of them called a lawyer on me. I found out one of them was a distant cousin. But at the end of the day, 2 of them came back, and we sat down, and we had a long conversation. We all apologized. But you don't get that too often. And so understand this. When you come to a funeral home, reality is you don't want to be there. Nobody wants to be there. But this is somewhere you have to be. So if you deal with everything ahead of time, I promise you, it'll be a whole lot easier. Know the difference in services. And when I say that, there's several different types of services. Cremation. You have a direct cremation. A direct cremation is when your loved one dies, you call us, we bring them in, we sign all paperwork, we take them to the crematory, and we bring you their cremains. That's a direct cremation. You have cremations and memorial services. The same thing, but you just have a memorial service at the funeral home or at the church. Then you have a funeral with a cremation. That means we embalm your body, then we have a funeral and take you to the crematory after the funeral. And then you have the standard funeral and burial. So let's talk just a little bit about burial. A lot of people think when you say funeral that encompasses burial. It does not. Majority of funeral homes do not have cemeteries, so you have to go somewhere else to bury. So that means a funeral home may or may not put the cemetery on their contract. It will make a difference because there's a funding fee. So what happens is if you come to me, you give me your insurance, I need a death certificate to get State Farm to pay me. I won't have a death certificate right away, so I use a funding company. Funding company is going to charge me 6.5%, so I have to pass that on to the consumer. So that's why I tell everybody now, start stacking money away, because you add 6.5 on $15,000, that's a lot of money that you can just put in your pocket, because that's really money you're just throwing away. So, but here's what's going to happen. If you go to a funeral home, then you go to a cemetery. If I don't put those charges on my contract, you got to pay that funding fee twice. So what I do is sometimes if I got to do it, I cut somebody at 3%, and then I don't make any money. So, but most funeral homes, let me say this: 90% of your funeral homes will do everything they can to help you. So know what's all involved. And I said this the last time, and I'm seeing it happen more and more and more. People die, and they have no clue what their family wanted. So they'll call us to pick their family up, and then we'll call and make arrangements and say, well, do we have permission to embalm your loved one? And say, we don't know yet. We don't know what mama wanted. Have that discussion. It's no reason why the person living in your house does not know what you want. Inform the important people in your life. Everybody needs, if you have a beneficiary, or if you have insurance, you do have a beneficiary, or you should. But you need to let people know who the beneficiary is, because that holds up the process. I had a case where a lady, she stayed at the funeral home 3 weeks because they did not know who the beneficiary was. So you need to let the important people in your life know what's going on. They need to know where the papers are at. Be honest. And this is the last couple of things. Be honest about everything, because after you die, no one can speak for you. And I think that's important, and that's important for men. And I never thought about this till I got in the funeral home business. You have kids out there that people don't know about. You done done stuff, be honest. Because you can't say, just because you take it to the grave, that don't mean somebody else is going to take it to the grave. And so you have children out there that have looked up to you all your life, and now you dead, and you can't explain certain things to your kids. I know this doesn't seem like I'm talking about the funeral home, but I'm talking about the funeral home because I see it happen. You got children that's popping up. You got lovers that's popping up. That's all about getting your life in order. And so when we talk about getting your life in order, it's just not the finances. It's just not the houses. It's about getting situations straight. You got arguments that you hadn't finished, and I'm telling you this because I deal with it all the time, and it's just not necessary. My motto is two things. I don't make funeral arrangements. I make memories. But I can't make memories if you arguing and fussing and fighting. So my second motto is, let's just get your loved one in the ground and y'all take care of that afterwards. So a lot of times we want to bring auntie, cousin. If auntie and cousin ain't paying, don't bring them to the funeral home, y'all. I'm gonna ask you this, why do they need to come? So, and I'm about to close. The big deal is in African American community, we're close-knit when we want to be close-knit. We want to be nosy. And so we come in there and we want to make sure he pick out the right casket. It's his wife. You don't have to pick up the casket for his wife. So if something happens to my dad, my mom is from the hood they call Eden Park. I'm not crazy enough to tell her anything. That's her husband. She do what she want to do. I'm just going to be there to support her. If something happened to my daddy, that's his wife. He pick out a green casket. That's his wife. It ain't my business. I will tell you this, if something happened to them, and I'm the funeral director, when it comes to him paying, I'm going to let somebody else do it. It's not my business. People come to the funeral home to know your business, and y'all too scared to tell them to get out. But see, them old ladies and them old men, when they come in there and they get ready to pay that bill, they turn around and tell me, put them ends out. And that's what they do. Because all it's going to do is cause you problems. Whether it's your child, I don't care who it is. If they don't have a vested interest in your finances, they don't need to know. And we need to get that mentality, because sometimes the problems we have are the problems we cause. So I thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to the next individual.
Praise the Lord, everyone. First off, I would like to